Welcome back to Daz's Unite, everyone. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Parameters tab, which is right here. What we've got here in front of us is the figure Blanche. I believe she's HD, high definition. I can't remember exactly the details on that. I've had her for just a little while. I'm also using Wasteland Mama outfit and some hair that's called Curl Me hair. And all of this is for Genesis 8 female. What we're going to discuss is specifically how to navigate around the Parameters tab area. If you don't currently have the Parameters tab, you can go down here to a blank area, right-click, Add Pane, and look for Parameters under P, which we already have it, so it won't show up there. And I believe you can also do that here under Window in the top menu, and you can find it up there as well. Here it is. Okay, so now that we're all set, let's take a look at what we've got. What you see in the Parameters tab is everything you currently have in your scene. You can twizzle down and see some useful information about each item, and I'll go into this in more detail in a moment. But first I want to discuss what the translate and rotation dials can do for you. I actually use these a lot. There are a lot of different ways of navigating around your scene and moving in and out and moving things around in your, your figures, moving them within the context of an environment or even just within the gray screen here. So what I do a lot is I will rotate on the y-axis, and I like to think of y as being upright. So it will make let's start with Y translate. That will just bring them up or down, the item that you've got selected. X translate will take them sideways. And Z translate will bring a character to the foreground or the background, like so. Rotation, it works similarly, although I have to admit, I always think of, in my mind, in a 3D space, I always wish X and Y were reversed. They just don't seem like, to me, this seems like a Y sort of thing to do. But anyway, let's see. So that's X, and then Y rotation kind of turns them on the Y axis, and I use that one, like I said, all the time. Z will tilt them side to side. Or maybe it's Z and X that I always get mixed up. Anyway, I rarely use those because I usually am dealing with upright characters. However, you can also take the universal tool, and I also use this quite a bit. You can kind of just see which direction by touching the little sort of handlebars almost in the universal tool, and it will show you what direction that circle will go if you start moving it around with your mouse. And I definitely use these, especially when I'm moving fingers around. I do that all the time. It's just it's the quicker way of doing things without moving something that I don't want moved. And speaking of that, this cute little person down here, this little icon, is useful for certain things. For example, if I've decided I want to go back to an original pose or the zero pose, I will click on Restore Figure Pose and it will take them back. So I just clicked it and it will take her back to that. But I don't want to do that. I don't want her in this adorable pose that I have her in. If I wanted to scale her against something else, for example, like make her look a lot smaller than, say, a building behind her, then I can do that. Occasionally I'll use that, and it's pretty rare when I need it. But when it's there, it's useful. Under General tab, we'll see some other useful stuff. So you can also see that if you just want to clear out the decks and just look at one type of item at a time, you can do that. And those are pretty handy if you're kind of getting overwhelmed with your options. I certainly had that problem when I was first starting and didn't understand any of this. So you can actually see these just one at a time. There's also a miscellaneous tab, which we probably won't get into too much with this particular video. Maybe point at, I don't know, we'll talk about it. All right, so mesh resolution. This one's useful for hair. A really great tip that Daniel Wright told me about, shout out to Daniel, is if you select the hair in the scene area and you go up here, twizzle that out and go up to edit, geometry, convert to sub D. If you notice, I don't want to touch it now, but if you notice in the down below it says resolution level base in the parameters tab area. We want to change that to high resolution, and there we are. So you can always go back to base if there's a problem. I remember I actually had that problem when I was dealing with the Daz house cat. I changed the fur to sub D, high resolution, and it changed all the orange tabby cat hair to white. It was really bizarre. I've never seen that before. So I had to go back to base. So you can always go back if there's some issue that you're dealing with. But if you don't have a problem with that, you can go to high resolution and under render sub D level minimum, choose 2. That will actually soften the look of the hair. And if you wanted to view it that way, I assume in your actual, within the Daz Studio interface here, you could also put it up to 2 there. Although that's not necessary, you mostly just want it to render that way. And then if you click on soft corners and edges as opposed to sharp edges, that's where the extra softness comes in on your final render. So that's a nice little tip that Daniel mentioned to me a while back, and I really appreciate it because my hair for all my Daz characters looks so much better these days. Okay, so what else we've got? Mesh smoothing, we're not going to mess with that because that is not really relevant to this particular topic. Now here's what I really want to talk to you about. On most items, you're going to see, attached to a figure specifically, and a figure themselves. So for example, Blanche herself, there's an actor tab or whatever. What you'll see in here is a bunch of morphs, and a lot of these morphs may be from morph packs that you've purchased, or they may have come from specific characters that you have also purchased. For example, let me see if I can find one that's specific to a character. Usually they're a different color. Oh, wounds. How about that? Oh, by the way, pay no attention to the fact that her legs are poking, or her arms are poking through. I think this is adding some wounds up here on her face, some different types of things. So it always pays to kind of look around and see what kind of possible morphs you may have gotten in one of your other purchases. There's a lot of cool stuff that you can find in here that you might not otherwise notice. Just so you know, some of these are base morphs, I think, and then others are from packs. Like, for example, this is the SFA implant pack. Let me show you. We'll do a huge upper lip. Let's see what that looks like. So now you can see that's changed shape. And now that I think about it, it's hard to see her face a little bit, so let's rotate her a little bit over so you can see her better. Yeah, now you can really see the change in her lip. And let's see what else we've got. Well, you won't be able to see her ears through her curlers, so we won't mess with that. Brows. That won't be easy to see either. Cheekbone size, let's check that out. You can instantly tell that's different. So, again, you can spend a lot of time or a little time, depending on how much time you have, in terms of whether you want to choose, your own very detailed morphs like jaw size or chin crease or any of those. I recommend just taking a dummy file to put in a figure and start playing around with all these to see what they do. It's kind of a fun process, and you can also choose specific morphs that were meant, hold on, let me actually go back. Here, you can go specifically to people. They're stylized. In other words, they're more like anime style, that kind of thing. Let's see what happens to her face when we do that. Whoa. Hello. Yikes. Actually, this brings me to an excellent point that I should make. When it comes to people's faces, it's best to look at what you've got dialed in. So if you click on currently used, you can see everything that makes up Blanche who she is, and anything that you've specifically dialed in. Like here's Zuri eyes. Remember I put those in? I'm going to take those off. So you can see those specific things. Now, if you notice, let me see, she's got a Mabel body. She's actually a figure based off Mabel. Mabel is the base Daz 3D character, and she is sort of an offshoot. And Blanche's body, she's at 100%. So if we changed her body to, let's see what happens when we change her to 0% Blanche. Let's see what changes it makes to her body. If you notice, things changed quite a bit. I'm also going to quickly get rid of Regal's dragon eyes, because I didn't really see much of a change there. Okay, Blanche's head. This is a big one. If you change the head shape to another character, if you go too far and you jack it up too high in percentage, it will go crazy. Like the way that face just looked when I added in, what was it, Chloe, to 100%, it freaked out her face. That's something you want to be careful of. So if I wanted to change up Blanche's look, I would actually do something like, say, put Blanche at 20%. And then I would go down into the people area and I might choose real world. And I might go into, oh, that's all of Blanche, I think. I might change, say, 40% of it. Well, actually, hang on. I specifically want her head. So I actually need to go into head and go into, is it head? Full head or is it face? I think it's full head. Somewhere in here, way down toward the bottom, is everybody in the real world. Here we go. So let's just try to change it to, say, 40% Morgana. And let's see, so we've got 20, that's 60%. So 20% is Blanche, I think. And 40% is Morgana. And now that's 60% total. So I want another 40% Raquel. So let's take a look at her face now. Quite a bit different. Wildly different, actually. So you can get a sense of that. And actually, if I jacked her head up to something even crazier, let's say 100%, watch what craziness occurs. So she kind of looks more alien almost. Actually, although that one's not too bad considering everything. But the weirder the face looks, essentially you don't want to go too far in that percentage. You want to basically stick around 100% no matter what dials you use for what person's head. So just keep that in mind. That's a little tip from me to you. All right, I'm just taking her back a few pegs so she doesn't look quite so frightening. Okay, so actor, again, is where you can make specific adjustments for that particular item. And it can be clothing, it can be props. Some items do not have any. Obviously, the figures are going to have a lot more than most things. And so what you have in here are head morphs, you have aging morphs, you have eyelash morphs, body part morphs, all sorts of crazy stuff. And ignore this one, unless you actually have this particular product. This is a cross figure. This would actually turn her more into looking like a guy features. Wow, that's pretty awesome. That's really cool. I haven't actually even played with this one yet. Interestingly, more of her hands are out of her body. That's pretty cool. I'm kind of digging that. I really need to use that more. So I'll put a link to that item in the description if you want to check it out. Display is mostly about showing the bones, and you can actually see where things are. That's pretty interesting. Oops. This is the sort of stuff that I don't generally mess with. I rarely mess with the simulation stuff because I don't tend to need it. I do a deforce quite a bit, but I just haven't needed to mess with any of that. Okay, so hidden. Yeah, those aren't usual. I don't usually see a lot of hidden options, but it looks like they're for specific characters, like Paisley has, looks like there's an eyes closed one. I don't know if it's really working. Yeah, I think that's for particular characters. I guess it's probably known problems with particular characters, and those are the corrections for those. Within the Parameters tab, you can find pose controls. Now, I always find it a little odd, but this is just the way it is, that a lot of times there really aren't pose controls under the posing tab. I would assume that all posing should be in that tab, but a lot of times there's nothing in the posing tab. I'm actually surprised to see it here, but then again, yeah, like for example, there's no posing for clothing items here in this particular one. These pose controls are actually from a product that I purchased. Otherwise, there probably wouldn't be anything there. If I remember, let's see. Oh, actually there are some basic ones. So yeah, it really depends on the character. I noticed some Genesis 3 characters, I don't have anything in there. Regardless, I tend to check actor pose controls for any pose options that I might have first, and then I'll check the posing tab to see if there's something there. Okay. So again, I can move things around depending on what morphs I have in my collection. And man, her arms are looking kind of creepy. So yes, you can play around with this to your heart's content, moving things around. What I tend to do is move things around in different ways. In fact, I will probably show you that right now since it's relevant. As you can see, we've got some poke through. And what I'm going to do is move her around the scene. This is what is this tool? The orbit tool. I just never really paid attention to it because I just use it and don't think about it. So I'm going to move that out just a bit, and I'm going to move this out a bit. Let's see if that helps. I think I need to go even further. So I just move things around where I see them, and I can grab this with the universal tool selected up here. That's what this one is. And I just move things around until I don't have any poke through problems. And hopefully that will work. It seems like it's good. And this is a little bit, no, see, now I've got a screwed up thing over here again. So it's a lot of just fine tuning. But anyway, I'd probably mess with it even further if I wasn't in the middle of a recording. There. Quickly, let me just show you what you can do with other types of items. So as you can see, there's only a general tab here and only a display tab here. Other items will have some other options. So again, this particular skirt has some expansion options and specific shapes for particular characters, figures. I suspect there were issues that came up in testing, and they have some particular shapes built just for specific characters. So those are some dials and morphs for, say, Alexandra or Kaylee. And one other thing I wanted to mention when it comes to the Parameters tab is you can look at all of the items all at once if you just want to start flipping through everything. And normally I don't do that. I usually just look at currently used and this basically shows me everything that I have selected, or anything that I've personally dialed in or off, or that the original product came dialed in. That's something to consider as just a really quick view of things. I think that pretty much covers the parameters tab, all the stuff that I really wanted to talk about in this particular video. If you have any questions on this topic, just comment below, and feel free to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And also, if you don't want to miss any future videos, you can hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching Daz's Unite.